Room service if I like, I order twice. Hibachi, got the gravy on the rice. Rolling in Mexico.
Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome into another edition of the Steelers Q&A. It's Jeremy Betts here with you, and I've got a special guest with us tonight. Dave Schofield is in the building. Dave, it's been a while since we've had you on the Q&A, but thought we needed to have some conversation this time of year.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that when you said, "Hey, Dave, are you available tonight?" I'm like, well, I was the last podcast that people heard if they listened to Unpopular Opinion this morning. I'm like, no, yeah, I'll do that. I'll hit it up again on Sunday. But I was thinking, it's been a long time since I've done the Q&A, but it's been even longer that I've done it with you. I've filled in for you a time or two since. If you were out, but I've not actually been on a show with you for a very long time, and you're really lucky because I almost wore that same hat.
Oh, well, hey, we would have been hat buddies, hat brothers, whatever. That's okay. I got a whole rack here behind me I could have gone to if I needed to get something else, but I'm sure you do too, right? I don't know.
It's upstairs, so I'd have to leave and go and all that other good stuff.
I'm still in podcast wherever I can get a free moment spot because of our house project. So right now I'm in the corner of the bedroom, but I set up a couple Steelers things and it works all right for now. So, but hey, got a lot of people in the chat already. Afton Fored, John S, Thomas Adams, Ray Dog 2028. This is a new one. We've got a lot of people ready to talk and chat about the Pittsburgh Steelers. So get your questions into us and we will answer those. But before we get into any of that, I just wanted to kind of open it up, Dave, to you about the Pittsburgh Steelers and how everything is going on this offseason. It's kind of been a strange offseason, and I mean, some to be expected because of some of the turnover and the high profile positions that are still under the microscope. But how do you feel about Pittsburgh's process this offseason and how they're going about their business? You can take this anywhere you want to: quarterback, free agency, the draft, whatever you want to talk about.
Well, you sure are right that it's been a very strange offseason. Because, I mean, we're still – I'm sorry, we're still in the holding pattern as fans until we have a better idea of what's going on with quarterback. And that idea very well could be for the Steelers to go with what they have on the roster of Mason Rudolph. I'm surprised how much of Steelers Nation and even Steelers media are actually kind of on board with that. I didn't know how people – would take that. And there are plenty of people that don't want to bring in an Aaron Rodgers, but there's really not much else the Steelers could do. I just want to know. And I understand, and I don't blame the Steelers for taking their time or not having to rush things, or they don't seem to be constrained by stuff. I just want to know so I could get a better feeling for the season, because it's really hard to get that feeling for the season. And when you have things like that looming, it's hard to really dive into some of the bigger things that the Steelers have done, like DK Metcalf. Honestly, people are downplaying a lot because I know they felt kind of burned by Patrick Peterson. I think the Darius Slay signing's a really, really big one. Yeah, and that's something that could really pay off for the Steelers. But we're kind of, those things are kind of suppressed because it's all about, I mean, if people see you wearing something Steelers out and about, is the first question, hey, are they going to have Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback? That's all I get everywhere I go. So it's kind of the driving force behind it. And I'd like to get it more settled so we can actually break down some of the other things that they've done that I think are some pretty good things.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with that thought. It's almost like, okay, the Steelers made this massive move to trade for DK Metcalf, and we all got excited about it for about 5 minutes, and then we're like, oh wait, who's throwing him the football? And you start to go, like, okay, so why make this move if you didn't have a plan at quarterback? And I've been saying basically the whole offseason that the Steelers' plan for quarterback is to get through 2025 to 2026 and find a quarterback in Pittsburgh in the draft. And whatever method that they can do so this offseason to get there, they're fine with. And if that's how they're playing this, and I would be fine with kind of whatever as well. So whether that's Aaron Rodgers, whether that's Mason Rudolph, if that would have been bringing in Kirk Cousins, for a year or something like that. I'd be fine with kind of anything along those lines, just as long as the Steelers don't reach for something this year that's not there. Or I did not want them to pay for Sam Darnold for 3 years and try to ride that wave. I thought maybe they could trade for a guy like Geno Smith or Matt Stafford if you were really trying to go in all on this year, but that wouldn't have precluded them from drafting a quarterback. I think that the way they're playing things is we think we can win games and be competitive and put a good product on the field for 17 games and maybe a playoff game or two, something along those lines, with the guys that are available to us that aren't going to cost us for next year's process of getting a quarterback. That's kind of been my take for the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. It's so unclear what the Steelers are actually doing. I mean, I said this to Jeff Thursday on the preview, that the Steelers always are doing things. Well, when I said always, almost always are doing things where it feels like to us as fans, they want to win now and they want to win later. They're not going to sell out everything to only win now and then suck in a year or two from now. And they're not going to just suck now to get better in a year or two. They always have both in mind. They want to be competitive every year. But this, my goodness, this does feel like the first time that the Steelers are trying to set up to have an adequate team in 2025 and set up to have a more than adequate team in 2026 and have it be a lot of not of the same pieces. That's what's crazy. Yeah. It's like usually you're doing it because you're trying to get people in place for both years, and they're not even. It doesn't even seem like a quarterback that they're trying to, and I don't think that they should. I think that's the right play. But even some of the other one-year contracts that you're like just get you to there, that it seems like they're setting up really well with a comp formula to get some picks there and all those kind of things. I mean, and you think, oh, wow, DK Metcalf, you bring him in. What are they doing? People that are critical of it because you don't have anyone to throw him the football. I think sometime in the next 5 years, it doesn't mean it's going to be their quarterback long-term, but somewhere in there, they're going to find someone to throw him the football under a 5-year contract. And then people are like, oh, well, you've got the two players that are almost the same. I keep saying, if you had two DK Metcalfs, would you not put them both on the field?
Right.
Yeah. What's the problem?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
so
and
we're trying to find problems where there aren't problems yet.
Right. Exactly. Well, and I look at it too, like Mike Tomlin said in his media availability when asked about DK Metcalf and George Pickens together. He said DK's big, George is tall, and that is not the same thing. So I see them as very different players as it stands anyway.
Who cares if they're the same? I don't care if they're twins. Identical twins. Exactly. If they're good, they should both be on. It's not like quarterback that you're only putting one out there at a time. At wide receiver,
right.
You would, my example was, you mean to tell me that the Bengals, if they had two Jamar Chases, they wouldn't put them on the field? You mean to tell me if the Vikings had two Justin Jeffersons, they wouldn't put them both on the field?
Right.
Yeah. Right. Doesn't matter. You just wanted to be good.
Best players play, right? That's how we want it to be. And And I kind of
the people are making a problem out of something that should not be a problem.
Exactly.
They've got two good wide receivers that are similar. Put them both on the field. Put them both on the field.
Yep. Okay. And tell the defense to figure it out, right? That their defense is going to have trouble doing that. So, okay, so let's jump into some of these questions here. Then, Afton asked right off the top, kind of a general take on Mike Tomlin's comments. So Dave, according to Afton's question, what did you get out of Tomlin's comments? What would you say was the big takeaway?
Okay, well, I'm going to steer clear of all the Aaron Rodgers stuff just because, not because I don't want to, because I'm sure it could come up, and so much of it was dominated. So I'm still trying to get all the reports. The biggest thing, honestly, I took out of it was some comments about Keanu Benton and the defensive line. And how the Steelers, Mike Tomlin talking about the whole nose tackle is rarely on the field idea of trying, taking someone with your top pick in the draft that plays a position that's only out there 20% of the time. You're not going to want someone that's purely a nose tackle. You're going to want somebody that can play nose or defensive tackle. I completely understand that. And then some of the narratives of, does that mean the Steelers won't go defensive tackle in the first round and everything else? And to me, I'm like, well, first of all, this is the ultimate cover job that they could really go in multiple places. I still think that would be a good place to go, even if the plan really could be Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton as your two main guys, and the little bit of time that you have to have three out there, you're going to put Montravius Adams out there nose. If they do that, I would have loved to see them improve there, but if that's what they go with, it's not like that they were just left hanging with nothing there. It could actually be their plan. But I also think that they should go defensive tackle in the draft. I would like it first. But the biggest thing that took to me was there's that people that are more tuned in with the team that think defensive tackle is a huge need. You're not going to see that in you rarely see defensive tackle going to the Steelers in nationwide mock drafts. When I'm looking for them every Monday for my article. And a lot of people aren't because they just don't see it. But people that are in tune with the Steelers see that right now as probably their biggest need. So that's why I do think that it's important, but maybe that's just moving us around. And I'm still talking because it appears that Jeremy is frozen. And I'm waiting for him to say something if he's not frozen. That I think... I don't think it's me. I think it's him. And I think there you are.
I think you're right. I'm back.
Okay, there you are. Okay.
My internet quit on me for like 2 minutes. I don't know what happened.
All right.
Oh man. So when I was hearing of your conversation with yourself there for a couple minutes was that the Steelers defensive tackle situation, that I agree with you that I think that that's probably the most glaring need of theirs, but they have different ways that they can address it. And I didn't think that was significant that Mike Tomlin said, we want a guy who can do a little bit of everything. Like you were saying, we don't want a specialist with our first overall pick. It was kind of the thought process there. Yeah. So my biggest takeaway wasn't actually, Afton, anything Tomlin said. It was actually the coach's photo. And Mike Tomlin is sitting in the middle, and Steelers fans who do not like the Mike Tomlin experience will think this is hilarious. These are the guys that Mike Tomlin is surrounded by in the coach's photo. Kevin O'Connell, Nick Sirianni, Andy Reid, Sean McVay, and Dan Campbell. The 5 most innovative head coaches in the NFL today, all sitting around Mike Tomlin, and his detractors would say, what's he doing in with that group? I just thought that was an interesting zoom in.
I thought I saw Vrabel close to them in there.
He might be right next to him, but the one I have from Brooke Pryor is him right there. I don't know if you can see it anyway.
I see it now. Yeah.
But I just thought that was an intriguing highlight that he's sitting between all these offensive minds here, and he's the only defensive guy in the group there. But
getting swallowed up by the offenses.
Exactly. And just as something about his comments, I did think that the fact that he's taking a nonchalant approach to the Aaron Rodgers conversation just plays into what I've been thinking that they've been doing. And a lot of us have been thinking is that they're just cool to ride this out, see what happens, and then make their moves accordingly. And if you're going to have Aaron Rodgers on this team, then I think that he makes you more of a contender than you would be any other way. But if not, then what you're putting together is something to build for the future. And I think that they can do that. It's just, like you said earlier, the Darius Slay move, it's a really good one, but it's a really good one for this year. So what are we doing at that spot next year? They're going to have to consider some of those things in their process. All righty. Another question here. Well, this is a comment from Mark Malone, and I think that it's an intriguing one, Dave. And about the draft, Mark says, I've got a Shuck Howard feeling. The Steelers could go quarterback in the middle of this draft. Is that kind of how you see things going no matter what? Are they taking a mid-round quarterback in this draft with as much attention as they've been paying to those guys?
I think they are ready to, if it falls in a way for them to do that. I don't think the Steelers are going to force it, which I think is a good idea. But I think if the right guy is there in the right spot, that they will do it. I would be really surprised if, well, I mean, my goodness, could it be that someone's sitting there in the third round and we're like, oh, they didn't take him? Maybe they would only take him if it was in the fourth round. If somebody like Howard sitting there in the fourth round, I'm like, I think, and the Steelers didn't draft one already, I'd be like, no, I don't know if he's going to make that far. You would know better than I would. But I would be like, yeah, grab them in a position there. But I don't think they should reach. People that are already saying, oh, the Steelers should take Jackson Dart. It's 21. The Steelers, I don't think Omar Khan is a reacher. And more importantly, Andy Weidel. I think he's for sure not going to reach in that regard. I mean, we only have a 2-year sample from those guys, but from what I've seen so far, they're more, especially in day 1 and day 2. Wouldn't you say in the last 2 drafts, what's so exciting is the Steelers are getting guys at picks that you didn't even know if that player would be available there.
Yes. Yep. They are playing the value game with their picks. Yeah. They really are. It was the same with the Darnell Washington selection from a couple years ago, where they traded back and he's still sitting on the board and you take him. And then Peyton Wilson last year, it was the same thing too. It's like, how is this guy still here? And the Steelers are the one to take him. Yeah. They've been playing that game, the value game, a lot better. They do that with their trades and their free agent signings as well, with these two guys running the show. So
that's good, but sometimes you've also got to wonder, what are they missing out on because they're so worried about value?
Right.
You know, especially when you're thinking of trades or free agency. So it's working well in a lot of places, but we're not even sure what places it means that they're missing out. I mean, we could already talk about, I know I'm skipping ahead because I marked one.
Sure.
But if I can find it, here we go. I'm going to bring it up just because it goes along with what I was saying, where Mark Cunningham says, I agree with the setup, Dave, but couldn't we have at least done the same thing with Justin Fields as QB1 this year? Yeah, they could have. I think with what we were saying earlier. But to me, did not signing Justin Fields, was that more of, we're only going to do that? Was that where they were looking so much for value that they didn't push it a little bit more and missed out? I don't know if that's the case. I assume it's the case, but we can't say for sure. So I like it when they're doing that in the draft, but sometimes being so focused on value can hurt you.
It can. Yep. And then, but you mix in like DK Metcalf and you mix in the Patrick Queen last year. Right. Yeah. And you go, okay, so they're making big moves where they feel that they most need it, I guess. But in a lot of times where we think the biggest needs need to be made are not where they would agree. Which can be a frustration for fans, but that's the way it goes. I have to bring this up because I did set up some Steelers stuff here asking for it. Oh my, I wonder if the other side of that room is orange and brown. Poor bets. It's not. And if we weren't living in such squalor right now, this would not be black and gold either. I'd have a separate place for that. But no, so we do draw that line down the middle of the living room during Steeler Browns games, but otherwise it's pretty safe around here.
I mean, no matter what. If you really want to draw the line where it should be based on that, the Steelers and the Browns, shouldn't she just basically get a corner?
Little corner of the couch.
I mean, because the Steelers compared to the Browns just did success. Otherwise, I don't think splitting that 50-50 is really representative of how things are between those teams.
Yeah, not between the teams. No, not at all. But if I want to sleep on my 50% of the bed,
what a good husband you are. Give her one Jeremy Jerome bets.
Yes, absolutely. Follow my example in that regard. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break for the audio listeners. If you're listening live, you know the drill. We're not going anywhere. The Steelers Q&A will be right back after this. And welcome back to the Steelers Q&A. It's a Sunday night. It's Jeremy Betts, and I've got Dave Schofield here with me. We're breaking down all of the questions and concerns that you as listeners have, and a little bit of putting Pittsburgh's process under the microscope tonight as well. Here's a good question from John S. that I'd like to get into here. Do you think drafting Pickett in a weak quarterback year will have the Steelers hesitant to draft one this year also, in what also seems to be a weak class? Or would drafting someone in the third round feel safer? So, Dave, do you think that the Steelers are approaching this and we're not going to reach, or not even saying that Pickett was a reach? He kind of fell into their laps too, right? There were a lot of, most people thought he was going to be gone by that pick anyway. But in this case, would the Steelers even broach the idea of a first round quarterback after the Pickett debacle, or would they take the less stressful route or less expectation route of taking one in the middle rounds?
Got to remember that was a different GM, so just got to keep in mind. Yeah, Omar Khan was still part of the team. He was more, of not as front and center. But then you also then you throw Andy Weidel in with that, which we know he's the guy that sets their draft board. The reason, so we can confidently talk about him being involved because they've told us how involved he is. So just remember that. But get back to the question of it being a weak quarterback year. I just go by what people tell me, and you're right about Kenny Pickett. We didn't think he was going to be there. Only Andrew Wilbar had him going in the second round. Sorry, I had to throw that dig in Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it also to me, it doesn't speak to Kenny Pickett himself. To me, it speaks to the value of the quarterback position and how it can be overvalued, particularly in classes where there's not a very strong class. That it can be overvalued. And honestly, to me, taking a quarterback out of I'm going to say, not in the first round and not in the first half of the second round, meaning you're one of those teams that didn't have a very good record the previous year, unless you came across this pick via trade like the Steelers did, where they drafted Joey Porter Jr. Those quarterbacks generally aren't guys that you're expecting to be your guy super long term. It's more of, can this guy be an adequate backup? Can he be the guy and potentially develop into something that's great? Yeah, but they're not going to sit there and wait 4 seasons to figure out what they got. I'm going to keep saying it. Kenny Pickett did the Steelers a favor by asking to be traded, because the Steelers would have needed to invest probably even still this coming year in Kenny Pickett to know for sure, because of being a first round pick. So drafting later would be safer, but you're also less likely to get the guy. The further you wait, the less likely that you are actually going to hit on somebody that could really be the guy. But right now, the Steelers just need some guys. I mean, they don't even have a full room. Right. So to me, I would still say that's a good time to do it, third or fourth round. If that's, it's a little bit harder when you don't have a second round pick in order to do that. But to me, that's, especially this year, that's the recipe. Just don't overdraft somebody.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. And I've been saying too that I think that this time of year, it always happens. That next tier of quarterbacks, they start to get pushed up in the eyes of media and fans, because you're trying to find anything to hang your hat on as far as skill and talent. And then you start looking at the tape a little bit harder, or whoever does that stuff. And then the consensus starts to change on them in the media and with fans. But that doesn't typically happen with the decision makers in NFL draft war rooms. They've made their decision on these guys, for the most part by now. It's just who bumps themselves up with the offseason stuff and who who drops himself down because they're not as athletic as we thought, and who just rides the wave into the draft. So I don't think that you push yourself up in the process too much in a weak quarterback class, especially when you start to look at the depth you have at running back and tight end and corner and all these different other areas in this draft, specifically defensive tackle, edge rusher. And you're like, well, why go get my second or third string quarterback in the second round instead of maybe a guy who could start in my defensive backfield in 2 years in the second round?
Yeah, so. And honestly, the more quarterback needy a team is, the more they look at some of these quarterbacks like the fans do, which is what they could be and not what they actually are.
Right, exactly. Okay, so this is a fun one, Dave. You'll know a good bit about this one. Brian Mizwa asks, with all our compensation picks next year, are they even tradable? The short answer is yes, they are. Dave, when did that go into effect, though? It was at one point where you could not trade your compensatory picks.
Yes, I want to say with the last CBA, but this might have been something that they did outside of the typical CBA year, because 2020 was the last CBA. It's been, I would say, at least 3 years that you've been able to trade them. It may be longer, but yeah. Yes, you can trade them. See, bringing up compensatory picks and everything, this could be an hour and a half show because I could talk that long about all this stuff. Just because I can. Just remember, all these things, it's based on mostly on their salary, but there's the tweaking in there. These are definitely projected, and yes, Over the Cap does it better than anybody by far, and they have the formula that they work in everything. But right now, they're simply guessing on how much percentage of snaps each of these players are playing. Like right now, I think they have Justin Fields at 74% of the snaps. If he doesn't play, if he only plays 30% of the snaps, that's going to drop. That could drop him out of being what is he now, a fourth, where he's projected? Yes. If he plays 90% of the snaps, he could go all the way up to a third. So it really, not to know if someone's even living up to what they're doing, you kind of have to look at what they're even projected their snaps to be. Because I mean, Dan Moore can solidify himself as a third. I think they have him playing 80% of the snaps, and that guy has only missed 2 games in 4 years. So so chances are, he can even solidify that even more. It's a long process, and I could take multiple shows to talk about it. But the biggest thing is, yes, they're tradable. And the bottom line is the Steelers just need to continue. As long as they've lost 4 more players that count to the number that they've gained, then they're in line to get 4 picks if it makes it that far down, because they only issue 32 of them.
Yep, I agree. 100%. Good stuff. Okay, Mr. Steeler fan, how does everyone feel about trading back in the first round in order to get a second round pick back, trade with the Vikings or Bills? Great question, but I would be wary expecting a second round pick in return for trading back in the first round.
That's what I was going to say.
If you look at value,
you trade Jeremy to pick up another 7. You'd have to trade back a long way.
So I think if you're wanting a second round pick in this draft for a trade back, you're probably trading out of the first round. That would be like, they're going to have to come up with some kind of compensation to say, I know we're taking out of the first round, so here's this to get you there. Right now, the trade value charts say a mid third round pick to move up 10 spots from, say, like Kansas City to Pittsburgh, 31 to 21. That would be like a mid third round pick in value to get up there. So the only way I think you're getting a second round pick in this draft class is if you trade a current player on the roster that is valued at that spot. But that's my opinion.
I think that's accurate. And I don't know that they want to do that. I don't know that they want to trade somebody to get that pick, because you really got to think about it. Is that player really worth that pick? Just like I said, they gave up a second for DK Metcalf. Yeah. But were you going to get someone in that spot that was going to be better than DK Metcalf? That's the question. So, and remember, they also did gain a 6th in place of a 7th as part of that deal. But the whole trading back thing, that you just got to keep reminding people. First of all, there's got to be a team that has the right value that would allow the Steelers to pick up. You say trade out of the first round and maybe all the way out to let's say maybe pick in the late 30s. But then that other team would have to have another pick of a high enough value that would make that worthwhile for the Steelers to go back that far. Is there a team that the value actually matches? That's one. Yeah. And then 2, would that team actually want to do it?
Right.
This seems like a draft in that area that a lot of people would probably prefer to move back. And when a lot of teams want to move back, that's not good if you're one of those teams. You want to be zigging when they're zagging. You want to be, hey, if everyone wants to move back, we're going to move up, and we're not going to give up much for it.
Right. And if I'm the Steelers, I'd be probably just as interested in picking up draft capital for next year as I would be for this year, the way my thought process is going. So, and if you, from what I've read, usually if say you're trading next year's second round pick to Pittsburgh this year, that values in as about a third round pick for this year. So you just basically drop it down a round, if you will, to get into that situation. So I'm working up a mock draft right now for the website. You can check it out when it comes out on steelcurtainnetwork.com, where the Steelers do trade back and they get a second round pick next year and a late fourth round pick this year. And that would line up with value charting. But if you're just going strictly this year, I don't think you're getting into that second round with a trade back personally. Okay. Here is a, let's see here. Here's a question from Mr. Steeler fan that I wanted to throw up here as well. Do we know how to develop a young QB, though? Tomlin should consider this. This was when we were talking about some of the rookie options and things like that. My thought here, Dave, is that if Mike Tomlin and his staff don't believe that they can develop a young quarterback, they don't need to be coaching. We may think as fans, this is a fan concern to me. We may think as fans that they might have that trouble. But if you're Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, you don't say, well, we're going to take somebody else's quarterback that they've already developed and not try to develop our own. That's basically admittance that you can't coach ball or that you can't do what you need to do to grow a franchise and build a championship contender. So to me, this is a fan question. Tomlin should just bring in quarterbacks and try to get somebody that works, in my opinion.
Yeah, they say, and I don't think it's Tomlin should consider this. I think Omar should consider this.
Sure. Yep.
That's the way I look at it, because Tomlin's part of the process of developing that quarterback, and it's really hard to evaluate that when you're one of the people doing it. You always think that you're doing everything that you can. Can they develop a young quarterback? We don't know. They've tried to once, and it didn't work out all that great. I don't like the overall mentality of play scared, don't turn it over, don't take any chances. I'm not a big fan of that. And I think fans are not. Most fans aren't a big fan of that.
Right.
So that bothers me. But to me, also, you got to look at the Steelers added another quarterback coach last year, and they kept Mike Sullivan on in a different role. So you actually now have a whole nother coach that would be part of quarterback development that they didn't have when Kenny Pickett was there. But part of quarterback development is you've also got to have the right guy to develop. And that's what's hard. Did they not have the right guy to develop? Did they not have the right pieces to develop him? I mean, and was it the right fit? I don't know. They've only done it one time. I'd need a little bit more data in order to try to be able to answer that one better.
Yes, I agree. Okay, Rob King. Is it the Rob King, or is this a different Rob King? Good evening,
Rob King's reached out to me before. I've communicated some with Rob King, and I said every time I see him in the live chat, I always have to pause for a moment. Is what I told him when we were talking. Yeah.
This is I 100% agree with this thought in the question here, or the comment from Rob King, but I wanted to bring it up here. Good evening, gentlemen. Rob King says, rather see Rodgers than reach at one in the draft this year. I think that's solid process for me, especially when you're talking about, or when you look at how the Steelers are doing things and building with these comp picks and the drafts in Pittsburgh next year. And there aren't really any clearly good options that you can get in the building for long-term help this year, either in the draft or in free agency.
Yeah, it's really tough when you don't have a number two. Just because, I keep saying that because it's the gap of how long you're going to go and how many players are going to be coming off the board until you pick again.
Yep.
So I would much rather have the easier answer is I'd much rather have Mason Rudolph than reach at one. But if your options are reach at one or Aaron Rodgers, I say give me Aaron Rodgers.
Yep, I agree. Okay. Let's see here.
Can I bring up something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. It was kind
Sorry?
of it was a response to something where Big Pun
Sure.
says Omar has zero say in
Oh, yeah.
personnel. He's a pencil pusher, cap guru. Tomlin is picking the personnel flat up wrong. Mike
Yeah,
Tomlin
this is
does
incorrect.
not have the power that people think that he does. He has players that like him, but it really comes down to me, it's more of a team between Khan,
and
Weidl, Tomlin.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's not a one-man show
No.
for the off-season stuff. Yes.
Yes.
I get that feeling from the building as well. Omar Khan and Andy Weidl are enough forward-facing during this part of the offseason and in the lead up to the draft and everything, where you just can look at it and see, and from my vantage point as well, that they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting here in this part of the process.
I mean,
Mike Tomlin's
he's got more say than guys that are in their second year a head coach.
Yeah.
But it's still ultimately, I mean, he has no say over the contracts. He doesn't.
Right.
So
yeah. And I mean, Omar Khan's not going to take a guy that Mike Tomlin says, I really do not want this guy on my team. But Tomlin's not going to just veto Khan and Weidl in the personnel department either.
I mean, let me ask you a quick question while you make sure you have that same one. Don't miss that one that you started to bring up. If it came to the Steelers were on the clock and the only three people that are throwing out their pick was Khan, Weidl, and Tomlin, who do you think gets their pick? I mean, this is pure speculatory. We'd never know.
Yeah. I think it's Weidl because I think he's the I think he's the they said it. He's the one that sets their draft board. He's the one that builds it all. Yeah. And Khan does do a lot of the I mean he's the contract guy, that's for sure. But it's not that he's not involved in that process at all. So yes. I agree. Okay. Where did that one go? Okay. John John says, what offensive player do you think the Steelers will take first? A QB, running back, or wide receiver? Which offensive player goes off the board first, Dave?
I'll tell you what, I think I would narrow it down to those three spots. I mean, what we're not planning for is the first round chaos of someone who you didn't think would be there is there.
Yes.
Like, I don't want the Steelers taking a first round running back after just not even bringing back their last first round pick running back. And no, not all of them are like a Najee Harris. Was that you or somebody that said every 215-pound running back is not Najee Harris? Someone had that out there. And the people say that. And for some reason, I even thought maybe you had said it. But like if the kid from Boise State fell, you take that. That's pretty much about it for me. But if you've gotten a situation like that, that would be about the only thing that would make me excited about them taking a running back in the first round.
Right.
Wide receiver. There's a lot of people talking about, I'm not even going to try to say his name, from Ohio State and everything about the Steelers. Yeah,
my boy.
I mean, I know you would say it perfectly.
Yes.
I don't know that that's the value pick there.
Yeah.
I like him. I like the idea, but I don't know that they have to go there. To me, if the Steelers don't have extreme value in the first round, I want the best defensive tackle they can get, but that's just me. Out of those three, it's really going to be where they get crazy value. I'm going to have to take a pick. Let's go Sorry, not second. They don't have one. Let's go third round. They go running back. I'll pick running back.
Yeah, I actually agree with that 100%. I think the running back spot's the one that they really want to address the most. And there's it's a deep class, but when you're looking at some of these teams that they don't want to pick a running back in the first round, and all that goes away when it gets to the second and third round. And I think these guys are going to start coming off the board pretty quick. So you're going to have to take one on day 2 to get one of proper value, I think, without waiting and a good bit further down the board. But I would say running back, and then quarterback or wide receiver. really at that point, if they're kind of determined to take that position, one of those two positions or both positions, I think they're just going to play like we've been talking all night, the value game with that, and whoever presents the most value for that pick is where they'll go next.
Then I have a follow-up question for you because I just want to know. Who is there a quarterback with, if assuming the Steelers stay put, have their picks that they're, I mean, remember last year they stayed put the whole draft. They just made their picks. If they're on the clock in the third round, what quarterback is there a quarterback that you think that if they took there would be value?
So if Jalen Milroe fell to the third round to that pick, he'd be the one.
Okay.
Or Tyler Shuck, he would be the other one.
See, I would even go Howard over Shuck. The age thing bothers me. I can't get over Chris Winkie. I just can't.
Yeah. The other one I think of is Brandon Weeden that the Browns tried.
Oh, that's right. That was the other one.
He was 27 or 28 when he started as well. So now Shuck is more talented than either of those guys were. But still, you've seen what you're going to see out of
either one of those guys out of a lineup. Honestly, I wouldn't know him to see him.
Sure. But I like Howard too, and that's not just because I'm an Ohio State fan. He fits the mold of a Steeler type quarterback.
Honestly, I'll be 100% honest, Jeremy. The only reason I kind of am liking Howard is the stuff that you've said about him.
Okay,
honestly, that's the only reason. And I know you're an Ohio State guy, and I still believe you. That's the only reason I think he's intriguing is some of the breakdown that you've done of him.
Well, good deal. I try to be as objective as possible.
You have my trust, Jeremy Betts.
Good deal. Well, I'm not saying he's going to, break the NFL or anything, but I think he'll be at least a solid player. He's kind of Mason Rudolph with more athleticism and maybe a little bit more touch and layering ability in the middle of the field. So that's just kind of my take on him. But okay, a couple more questions here we'll get to before we wrap things up. Since we're still talking about additions, so we'll go ahead and do this one from Gavin Anthony. Do you think they'll get an offensive lineman, specifically a non-center, in free agency? Mr. Stiller fan mentioned earlier, why not sign Will Hernandez at guard, under 30, top 3 pick in the second round in 2018? He would come cheaper than Daniels. So do you think that the Steelers are still going to address offensive line? I'm just combining these two questions together here. Yeah.
To me, I think that's I don't think the Steelers are in a rush.
Yeah.
I think they could use the excuse of the draft to wait. And then you wait. I haven't been able to find it anywhere for this year, Jeremy, but it's usually the Monday after the draft after 4 p.m. that then anybody signed then doesn't count towards the compensatory formula. That's generally when that is.
It is May. That would make it May 5th.
Yeah.
I want to say
it could even be Sunday. I'm not even sure.
Yeah. But
But I've tried to find that, and I can't find that anywhere for this year. From a source that I would feel was reliable enough that I would go with it. So, and I haven't looked for a while, so maybe it's been out there since I last checked. But I wouldn't be shocked if they add an offensive lineman then, knowing that it wouldn't count in the formula. If they're going to add somebody else, it's going to be someone else that's cut or someone else on a small enough deal that they could do it. But to me, I still think they've got to get that third tackle at some point.
Yeah. They've got to get somebody who can swing, right? Who can play the swing tackle spot.
Yeah. I think they're good.
I would like them to be better, and I think they would too.
I like both. I think they're fine with McCullum as the backup, so they don't have to do someone who can play center. So that was right, Gavin, that they didn't have to do that.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Brian Z.
Oh, this is a big one.
How much better could Mason be starting training camp as the starter and having plays designed on his strengths versus coming in late in the season off the bench, or do you think he would be the same? Dave?
Okay. Here you go, Steelers Nation. And unfortunately, I'm that guy too many times. I mean, I know Jeff is a pretty positive guy. I always thought I was a positive guy until I got to know Jeff. Jeff is he never picks against the Steelers. I mean, well, I scolded him where he doesn't do the 17-0 whenever the schedule comes out anymore, because that just kind of ruins everything. But every week he picks him, and I don't blame him. But Jeff is pretty down on stuff right now, you have to admit, and that he's frustrated with things. But I'm just saying, if you want to take a positive spin, then you want to look at if we find out that Mason Rudolph is going to be the guy going into camp, these are the kind of thoughts you want to keep in your mind.
Yeah.
That him being the starter, having the plays designed for him, knowing that he's the guy the whole time, and have it actually designed around his strengths, that would be a really good positive thing. If you are someone who likes to be a doom and gloom Steelers fan, and I know we got a couple of them in the live chat, I love talking with them too, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, then you're going to focus on, hey, Rudolph wasn't, he had some pretty rough moments last year in Tennessee. Yeah, we can blame that on Tennessee. But was the reason that he did so well for the Steelers is that he had to come in without the pressure of being the guy and without thinking about it so much, and he'd just come in and play free? I'm not telling you, if you made that as your argument, I could not tell you were wrong either.
Yeah.
So it's really how you want to spin it.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of me wants to say that you see like a cap on his ability, and I just don't know if he's going to ever go beyond that. But I mean, there is always going to be that unknown. We've seen poor situation play into QB play where they get moved somewhere else and they're a much better player. I mean, recent examples are Geno Smith and oh, now I'm gonna blank on his name. The Darnold kid, Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
That they go to a different spot. There's something designed around them. They step in, they play much better, and then they all of a sudden are getting these big contracts, big deals. They're getting traded to. And
ironically, both of them are on different teams this year.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see how that works. Yeah.
Right. So Mason's got a shot here, and the Aaron Rodgers saga obviously it is what it is at this point, where does he want to play or not? If he does, it sounds like Pittsburgh. If not, then he's going to retire. That's fine. But Mason Rudolph, that's backup money. They didn't pay him necessarily to be the starter. If he just ends up being that for them, though, I do think that they sit back and they say, that is fine. We're going in all in on quarterback next year. And we just need somebody to get us through and be competitive this year. And to me, Mason Rudolph is at least that in this system with Mike Tomlin as his head coach.
Yeah.
All right. Last question.
I'm going to say, before you do, I'm going to say one last thing.
Yeah.
For those people that think the Steelers just need to have a 4 or 5 win season to really be able to reset things. I know Mark Madden's one of them, that's what they really need to do. If the Steelers go with Mason Rudolph, I don't think that he would have that kind of season, but there's always that potential of, okay, this is really who he is. And the ride would suck. It really would. But when we'd be talking this time next year, we'd be excited going into the draft in Pittsburgh.
Sure would be. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those, live through the hell of it to get to the heaven of it, right?
And I'm not saying I would predict that to be the case. I'm just talking as a more of a worst case scenario that's what they're going to do, and it just falls apart. You never. That's the thing when you do this, you never know if it could just fall apart.
Right. Well, that's the thing to me though, is like I don't anticipate it falling apart no matter who they played at quarterback, because I mean, you literally, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are winning seasons under Mike Tomlin where you could not have gotten worse starting quarterbacks throughout the course of the year.
Yeah.
And I mean, nothing against guys like Duck Hodges, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, whatever. It's just was bad quarterbacking, and they still won games. And let's not forget, you've got TJ Watt, you've got Cam Hayward, you've got Minkah Fitzpatrick, you've got DK Metcalf now, George Pickens. You're going to have high draft picks this year that are going to contribute to your team. You've got a good linebacker room. This team isn't winning fewer than 7 games, in my opinion, no matter who's playing quarterback. It's just what does the quarterback do to bring you the upside beyond that. So we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, you never know. Never. What did Mike Tomlin say? Never say never, but never. That's what that's kind of my thought too. Never say never on the 4 or 5 win season, but never. Under Mike Tomlin and with these players on the roster. So, all right, final question here. Got to bring it up. Steeler Nation Australia, our boy, Marky D. Thoughts on Wang Harb's Ravens coach new deal? I really don't care.
I was going to say, take a screenshot right now, everybody, because this is a picture of me caring.
That's right.
Now, nothing against the question, Mark. That's a good question. But really, I do not care about the contracts of coaches for other teams.
Sure.
They don't affect the salary cap. Teams, I don't care if teams spend $1 on a coach. I don't care if they spend $1 billion on a coach, because it doesn't affect the salary cap. It does affect the competitive balance, because quality coaches are going to make or can make good teams better. But it's not like he's going somewhere new. So,
well, and I was going to say, the only expectation after the way they've played the last few years, after the way they built their roster, was for him to come back. So it would have been the thing that would have shocked me, the thing that would have made me care, is if they had declined to do so and said, we're looking to go a different direction, maybe, because that's just not what happens when you're winning games like they've been doing. So,
wasn't that long ago he was on the hot seat, wasn't it?
It was that. So it was the couple years
it was
where
the 8-9 year, right?
Joe Flacco went downhill, and then they drafted Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson saved his job that in 2018, coming in the second half of the season.
No, I still think 2021 was coming out off that season when they were only 8-9 and came in last in the in the North.
Okay, yeah.
Didn't Jackson miss a lot of time that season?
He did. That's right. The 2021 season was the one where he had the phantom hamstring injury and never came back for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And they went 8-9 with Tyler Huntley. That's right. So, hey, man, good stuff. Fun show. A lot of stuff to talk about.
Are we done already? It seems like we just started.
Right? Almost an hour in, and it feels like we just got going.
This is so much fun.
It feels like the Steelers haven't been doing much, but hey, we always find stuff to talk about. We always appreciate y'all's questions in the chat. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button here if you're listening in on Facebook or X or something like that. Share the show. Go follow our website, our accounts. Dave, you got anything to plug? Go ahead and do so.
Oh, let's see. If you didn't listen to Unpopular Opinion this morning, it's out there on the audio side. It's also an article at steelcurtainetwork.com. That's about, people making such a big deal about the Steelers' run defense that you're looking at a really small sample that was really bad, but there was a lot of stuff in there that was really good. It's not as far gone as what some people might think that it was. And part of that was the team that did it was a really good running team. I'll have my mock draft Monday article all ready to go for. I'll tell you, it's a pick I don't like because it's the opposite of what I was saying tonight with Jeremy. I think the Steelers, certain positions they'll take if it's value. Other ones they're not going. The Steelers aren't the kind of team that's going to reach on somebody that's shooting up the boards because they had a good combine.
Right.
So when they get assigned to the Steelers, but I've got to look for different players every week. So this was a good one to find a different one. Check that out at steelcurtainetwork.com tomorrow morning. I think it's 9:30 Pittsburgh time in order to see who that was.
Good stuff. Dave, I always appreciate you coming on the show. And it's always fun. Follow Dave on X at STLRSuperFanDad. Follow myself on X at TheBets93. And stay tuned to SteelCurtainNetwork.com. And wherever you get your podcasts, we've got multiple podcasts every day of the week that you can check out. Something for everybody at SteelCurtainNetwork.com. And if you want more draft content, then go follow myself and Andrew Wilbar on the FFSN NFL feed, wherever you get your podcasts. We do the Draft Dynasty podcast there. Check out a lot of our rankings and different talking points about the drafts. Always fun. Dave, hope you have a good night. Listeners, hope you do as well. That's going to do it for us here on the Steelers Q&A.